Hey everybody, make some noise, put your hands together. Welcome to Artist Space on this lovely November 16. It is Saturday night. We are in Cortlandt Alley, a little secret here in Manhattan. My name is Reggie Kubico. I am the executive director, interim of A Gathering of the Tribes. Can we give a big shout out to Gathering of the Tribes? If you don't know it, A Gathering of the Tribes was founded in 1991 by poet, playwright, and former professor Steve Cannon, who passed away in 2019. Gathering of the Tribes is a place where I developed as an artist on East 3rd Street between B and C, going between Professor Steve Cannon's house and the Nuyorican Poets Cafe. Steve Cannon would have artists, writers, scholars discussing, sharing work. His apartment was a visual arts gallery. It was a cultural hub. In this incarnation, we are so excited to collaborate with Segue series. Can we give it up for our Segue folks? Yeah, shout out to Jake and Madeline and Cecilia and James Sherry and Lonely Christopher for supporting our space and all of these fabulous writers. So in this incarnation and iteration, most recently we published this Black Lives Matter issue with Ishmael Reed and phenomenal poets and phenomenal artwork. So this book is available for sale if you would like to check that out. I want to give a big thank you to Tracy Dawn Williams, who is really the heart of Gathering of the Tribes. I wouldn't be able to do this work without her. I want to give a shout out to our incredible board members, especially to Catherine Arnaldi and to Katie Duncan, who's out there. Katie, thank you so much. We are so excited because we have two phenomenal poets. We have Thaddeus Rutkowski in the house. Thaddeus Rutkowski in the house-key. And we have Jee Leong Koh in the house as well. I wouldn't be able to do this without my co-curator, Drew Pissarra, and we had a plethora of incredible poets to choose from, but we were looking at probably one of the most pertinent voices that we wanted to present in this first season. So a little bit about our poets, our writers here. Jee Leong Koh is the author of Sleep Tea, named a Best Book of the Year by UK's Financial Times. His Snow at 5 p.m. won the Singapore Literature Prize. He heads the literary nonprofit Singapore Unbound, the press Gaudi Boy, and the journal Suspect. Thaddeus Rutkowski is the author of 8 books, including 2 of poetry, Border Crossings and Tricks of Light. His most recent book is Safe Colors, a novel. He teaches at Medgar Evers College, Columbia University, and at the YMCA. He's received fellowships from the New York Foundation for the Arts. Before I have you throw some fanfare to Thaddeus Rutkowski, it is a joy for me to be alive and to bring you back to Gathering the Tribes as an ED. Thaddeus, we have read together, slammed together at the New York Poets Cafe. I've always been blown away by your audacity and the way that not only do you go over the edge, then you go some more and some more. And after that, then you create wings and leather straps and are able to soar through all different multiverses. So I specifically, I wanted to share an excerpt of in Thaddeus's latest book of poetry, Tricks of Light. Here is a poet at the top of his craft, reaching a meditative transcendence and generously giving it to us as if ripping a bouquet of memory from his chest. Please help me welcome to the stage the incredible, my dear colleague, Thaddeus Rutkowski. All the way up. Yes. Welcome. All right. And before Thaddeus comes out, I also want to give a shout out to 2 incredible writers. We have 2 poets. Pervin Saket from India is in the house, so you are very welcome here in our Segue space and with Gathering of the Tribes. Please feel like you are a part of our Gathering of our Tribes. And also to Chris Say, who is the Poet Laureate of New Zealand. We're really happy that you're here. So without any further ado, Thaddeus Rutkowski.
Yeah, thanks to Reggie and Drew for having us here. Thanks to all of you for being here. Looking forward to hearing Jee. I think I have 7 pieces. Start with this piece, which is on the Gathering of the Tribes promo page. It's called What's in the Name? The name is Thaddeus, but the choice of the name was ill-advised, I think. No doubt my parents wanted something classical or something radical, Oedipus and Orpheus would not do, and for some reason Theodore and Thelonious would not either. So my father decided. My mother, it seems, did not have much say in the matter. She picked Shaolin, which means little forest, and sounds something like her first name, Jain, which means good tidings. But I don't go by Shaolin. What I go by is a little stranger. To many people, I am Thad, which is easy to spell and fairly easy to say, unless you think it's fab, as in OFAB. I'm glad they put real borax in you. My first and middle initials, JT, are even easier, so I use them when I make reservations, arrange for deliveries, or sign my name on lists. One of my old friends calls me JT, except for the times he calls me Stud. Other people I know call me T-Bone. Some of my friends think T-Bone is too casual, but I like it better than Fazul or Pube, which are nicknames of other guys I know. I have not been called Tadpole for quite a while. But an old girlfriend used to call me A-Tad, which was short for A-Tad Stoned. Some of my close relatives still call me Tad, but so far no one else has adopted the shortest form. When I meet people and tell them my name is Thaddeus, they say, that sounds like a biblical name, or that sounds like a 19th century name, or that sounds like a plumber's name. Sometimes my new friends take an initiative and shrink my name to Chaddy, Teddy, or Patty, or Chad, Ted, or Pat. For a while, people in my office confused me with another Asian guy who looked like me, called him Thad and me Henry. My last name is no less problematic. Rutkowski just does not fit my face. At times, however, to my great surprise, I pass for Eastern European. Someday I might change my name to my mother's maiden name, which is simpler and more descriptive, and become Mr. Wong. And I have this short story from my first book, Rough House. You can save it till the end. This is called Beautiful Youth. A lot of my work is autobiographical. Beautiful youth. I bag raced whenever I could. To compete, another bag racer and I would find an open area. There we would put paper bags over our heads, lean toward each other, and set the bags on fire. Then we would turn and run in opposite directions. Whoever got farther before tearing the bag from his head won. Each time I took off, I would see a sheet of flame that quickly became a fire-edged square. Through it, I had a narrow-angle view of ground and sky. Soon I could smell burnt hair. Usually, by the time I pulled off my bag, the other racer already would have extinguished his headgear. When my scalp began to peel, my parents took me to a doctor who prescribed a sulfur medication for the outside of my entire body. At home, I stood in the bathtub while my father sponged the orange liquid onto my skin. He started at my head and worked down. When he got below my waist, he said, "Soon you'll have so much hair on your balls, I won't even know you." Then he retreated to his studio where he had books filled with photographs of beautiful youths. My mother collected a sample of my blood and took me to the hospital where she worked. In the laboratory, I saw some organs in jars. One jar held an enlarged heart, another a diminished brain. I also saw an exhibit of objects dug from people's bodies. Among the hooks and splinters was a handgun labeled "smuggling attempt." My mother told me I was okay. Then she took a bag of old blood out of a cooler. When we got home, she sprinkled the blood onto plants in the yard. Alone, I conducted a chemistry experiment. I poured alcohol onto a metal table and threw a lit match at the clear puddle. There was a concussion of air as the alcohol ignited. When the fire died down, I was not satisfied. So I found a grocery bag, put it over my head, and lit it. I stood for a moment, looking at the up-close sheet of flame. Then I started to run. No one was watching, which was too bad. I spread fire with my head. When my parents came home, my father went to investigate. What happened? My mother asked. He torched his bedroom, my father said. My father called me a fuckster. Then he went into his studio and shut the door, presumably so he could look privately at his photographs of budding youths. My mother tried to talk to me. All I want is for you to be happy, she said. But I can't tell if you are unless you let me know. It's very simple. You let me know, and then I can tell. So will you let me know? I walked to a farm field and screamed obscenities at the grazing cows. They were a good audience. I picked some Queen Anne's lace, rolled it in paper, and smoked it. A fire caught inside my head. Soon I had to fight to make a sound. Later I looked out a window and saw waves of smoke rising from the field where I had been. A siren went off as the smoke turned from white to yellow to brown. After dark, a glowing red line snaked up the nearest mountain. All right, good. I have 5 more pieces. Okay, this is the beginning of, I just should say I grew up in the country, obviously, in northern Appalachia. So I moved from northern Appalachia to New York. It's from my book called Tetched, which means touched in the head. Every sentence here starts with I believed, and this piece is called Belief System. I believed that when I saw trees shake, I was seeing the force that made the wind blow, and that when the trees swayed faster, they pushed the air harder. I believed that with a piece of string, a dry chicken bone, and an open range, I could be a cowboy with my own personal horse. I believed that I was immune to electrical current, natural gas, and solar rays, so I spent hours at outlets, at the stove, and in the sun. I believed that when I saw people shot on television, I was witnessing actual killing, and the actors must have been paid a lot to die. I believed that I could parachute from a shed roof to earth using only a cloth napkin held by its 4 corners to slow my fall. I believed that I had to imitate my father and be different from my mother because my father looked like the people around me and my mother came from a different tribe. I believed that when my mother told me about children chasing, cornering, and killing a red fox in the place where she grew up, she was trying to tell me what not to do. I believed when my father told me never to say holy cow, that I could avoid his wrath by saying holy cats instead. I believed that I would never learn how the other half lived through church services or Sunday school. I believed that it would be tragic for my father to be executed for assassinating a political leader, his close friends, or his immediate family, even though he often said he had to do so. I believed that I had to choose between my parents, that I had to decide who was my favorite in case one upped and left. I believed that I should not ask for things because invariably I would not get what I asked for. I believed that if my penis turned out to be comparatively small, I could compensate by letting my hair grow long. I believed that if my hair were long enough, I could hide behind my fringe and speak very little, if at all. I believed that I was not tall enough to function normally in my given society, but that if I moved to Nepal, I could play on a basketball team. I believed when I was stoned on dope that there was nothing more interesting than the concept of arm, save, of course, for the concept of leg. I believed that I should refrain from heavy petting because my sex cells were so potent they could travel through denim. I believed that if anyone was making someone else's life hell, I was not the one doing it. I believed that I could enter a place that was warm, safe, and suited to the reptilian part of my brain through self-suspension, self-flagellation, and self-deprecation. I believed that I could get along best with someone who had been assaulted as a child, but that if I couldn't find someone who had been, I would just have to go out and assault someone. I believed that I could live with someone who did not sympathize with my obsessions as long as I loved that person deeply enough, but I was totally wrong. And then I have a couple of actual poems that look like poems. And this one comes from a book called Border Crossings. And it's called Acupuncture, which I experienced when I fractured my shoulder. Acupuncture. The last straw is the pin in my head. Why the head, I ask. Sometimes it works, the acupuncturist says, but in my case it doesn't. My arm is in pain the whole time. I'm on her table, motionless, listening to pleasant music. I'm a hard case, coming back from a broken bone with a joint locked by thick adhesive tissue. This is just to help you relax, my caregiver says as she stabs another needle through my hair. I do get a little tired then. Take these pills for the pain, she says. Take 7 at a time. I take a handful of the dark tablets and I feel sleepy all day, though my arm doesn't hurt any less. The half of me that's not Eastern will have to let the Eastern medicine go. And then this is from next book, Tricks of Light, another poem. This is, I know what it's called. Yes, it's called In the Buddha's Tooth Temple. And this is a temple in Singapore, actually. I guess in the Chinatown, or the Chinatown part of Singapore. This is called In the Buddha's Tooth Temple, named because in one section of the temple is a tooth believed to have belonged to the Buddha, who was a prince, right? Indian prince. In the Buddha's Tooth Temple, we walk into a temple to see the relic, a tooth of the Buddha found in Myanmar, long after the Buddha was alive. We stop at a series of altars, one for each sign of the zodiac. In each section are 100 tiny Buddhas, each with a unique hand gesture or facial expression, like those of the soldiers in China's old capital, where terracotta bodies are identical, but whose faces are individual. We proceed upstairs as all around us the chants of monks come through an amplified system and fill the temple. We pass a giant prayer wheel and reach the room with the relic. I wonder if it's a molar or an incisor. No one's in the room. There's no crowd around the pedestal, holding the tooth of the prince who gave up everything he had to gain everything he needed. And then I have one more sort of story. Yeah, down to 2 more things. One, this is a story about my family. It's actually based on a dream, so it's kind of surrealistic, but I guess it sounds kind of plausible. And I should just say I have a family. I have a wife and daughter, and our daughter is now a young adult, but throughout her childhood, she gave me material for writing. I'm grateful. I'm grateful for that. Oh, and I should say this piece made the long list for the Wiggly 50, and the Wiggly 50 is already a long list. So you can imagine how long that long list was. Because the short list is 50. Okay, so, right, this is on the long list for the Wiggly 50. It's called Finding Our Way. I was in a strange place with my family, a new country, or a new part of our own country. Our daughter was bigger than a toddler, but small enough to find happiness in minor things. We were spending time in a park before we had to leave. It was a boys' park because it had trees for boys to climb. That is, only boys were allowed in the trees. Our daughter, nevertheless, had good arm strength. She could pull herself onto a horizontal branch and sit without her feet touching anything. All I could do is jump up, catch the branch with my fingers, and hang there for a few seconds before dropping off. "Do you like this park?" I asked her. "It's not a park. It's a garden," she said. I looked around and noticed the large, lush trees lining the paths, and between the trees, a carpet of grass. "It's more of a garden than a park," my wife said. Our daughter bounced up and down. She was not allowed to climb the trees, even though there were no boys around. We saw a bulletin board that listed free activities in the city around the park. There was a hip-hop event, a comic book conference, and an astronomy workshop on the highest hill. But we wouldn't have time to do any of those things. We had a travel schedule and couldn't leave the place yet, but we couldn't do anything that involved a lot of time. We had to find something of interest in the park where there were no other children. I picked up my daughter by hooking my elbows around her knees and lifting her onto my back. She was almost too heavy, but she had asked me to carry her. She extended her arms to see how high she could reach. She grabbed some low-hanging branches and released them. "Go right," she said, and I turned. "Go left." I followed her instructions, but could feel strength draining from my muscles. My elbows wouldn't stay bent, and my knees wouldn't stay straight. We had a long way to walk, over a bridge, along a road, to get out of the garden called a park. There were markers, stones painted white, to show us the path. When we got to a significant place, we would see a name etched into a boulder. "I'm getting tired," I said. "I have to put you down." I bent my knees so she could hop to the ground. She slid a leg over my head and found her footing immediately. The three of us held hands as we walked on a stone path. We didn't often hold hands, but we did now. This way, no one would get lost. We were walking from a shaded place to a brighter, open area. An archway stood over the path that led from one side to the other. On our side of the archway were trees and shadow. On the other were trees that opened into a clearing through which a paved walkway passed. We might not have been going far at all. We might have been heading for the avenue that bordered the park, and from there to our destination. As we approached the end of our walk, a man started to play a harmonica. I wasn't sure if he knew how to play the instrument. The reedy squawks didn't come together in a recognizable melody. The sounds were mostly noise. Perhaps they were art music. Still, I was glad for the familiar sounds. The rattle of glass objects came from another direction. I pictured a bottle collector sorting through the trash. The collector would have to dig deep to find items that were worth something. Our destination was marked with a boulder engraved with a name. I could see the end of the path, but couldn't read the name. I was sure it said something that would tell us where we were, something that would tell us we had arrived. And the last piece is short. This piece has two voices, and I will do both voices, so I will step from side to side so that you can tell which voice is speaking. It's called White and Wong. It's about a person named Mr. White. He's probably a white guy. And there's a guy named Mr. Wong, and he's probably an Asian guy. Okay. Hi, I'm Mr. White. That's White, and I'm Wong. We're here to discuss the difference between us, the difference between White and Wong. That's White. That's White. We're going to get lots of attention for no reason. That's Wong. We're going to make some interesting points. Pure White. We're going to ask pointed questions, then ridicule the answers. Utterly Wong. There is no answer, and that's the answer. Almost White, but not quite. If you lean on the edge, on your chin and your elbows, you will see the answer where it lies, which is within. Wong, Wong, Wong. If you see the answer, why ask pointed questions? I'm losing track of the difference between White and Wong. Wong again, the difference is as plain as day or night, or dusk and dawn. All white, all white. I've been Wong-headed. On the contrary, I've been Wonged. Let's put things to whites. I know I'm white, and I think you're Wong. But remember, two Wongs don't make a white. Might makes white, or at least it might. If you don't go Wong, some Wongs will never be whites. The white side of my brain says white, but the Wong side tells me Wong. Wong you are. There is no absolute White or Wong. If you're white, can we both be Wong? How can it be Wong when it feels so white? Thank you.
Thanks so much, Thaddeus. I've told him many times, I'm a huge fan of his work. I first heard him when we were reading together at an event that Reggie curated, and I immediately went up to him after the reading, and I was just like, hi, I'm Drew. Like, I wanted to become friends with him. And I was looking at my bookshelf today, and I realized that I have more Thaddeus Rutkowski books on my shelf than any other author. So I think this was an endorsement of why that is. Every week I've been making art objects inspired by the poets as a way of saying thank you, and sort of, because I allow myself to really immerse myself in their poetry, and it gives me a way of sort of embracing it. So with Thaddeus, I actually did some research and looked at some of his early chapbooks, which are at the Beinecke Library up at Yale. There's one called one called Supernature, which is a very early chapbook. And one of the things I learned from that chapbook was that on December 24th, 1993, his poem Venus Flytrap won the Poetry Slam tiebreak at the New York Poets Cafe. So it seemed like a random fact to include in a book, but then I was like, well, what does the Venus flytrap, like where did that draw my mind? And I had this idea for a while of really wanting to make a, what's called a cootie catcher, or a fortune teller for one of the poets, and I felt like it's sort of like a Venus flytrap, right? So normally, I think cootie catchers have colors on the outside, but I did sort of symbols that I felt aligned with Thaddeus's work. So there's like a skull, and there's like a knowing eye, and a typewriter, and a dice that sort of embraces chance. And then on the inside are the different numbers that you pick. So I thought before we move on to Jee's object, we might do something. The fortunes are all drawn from Thaddeus's poems. Mother's Advice, Plasm, 9 Rules for No Sex, and how to survive childhood. So you can, anticipate what this kind of advice we're going to get is like. So why don't we start? I'm going to read the different objects on the outside. We're going to get a collective fortune told, and then you can help guide me through it. So we have a star, a seeing eye, a die, a typewriter, a rose, a top, and a sun. Okay, rose. I was instructed that you go R-O-S-E. So that leaves us with 4 numbers, 1, 2, 5, and 6. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we have 1, 2, 5, and 6 again for the final fortune. 5, thank you. Today, our guiding advice: run before you get trapped in the basement by a very large disciplinarian. So, let that be your guiding principle for the rest of the day. So, with Jee, I was reading this book, Steep Tea, which I really enjoy, and I've been spending a lot of time with it. But there was another book of his that I became obsessed with this past week called Equal to the Earth. But I was so, like, the Steep Tea, it's such a strong image that I took my idea for the concept of steep tea and applied it to his book, Equal to the Earth, and I created a tea sampler. So these are all little bags of tea. Each bag has a line that really caught my fancy in a different poem, and then the page number is on the reverse side, so that you can look it up. And the idea was that if somebody was, if this was next to the book on his shelf and you're like, what poem should I read? And you could just pull out a little bag as a guide. And then I thought, he's never going to remember how this works. So I created a little instructional manual that would go with it. And it says instruction manual. But I'm going to just pull out a random one just to give you an idea. So this one, this is a captivating line to me that would make you want to read the poem. We shall not talk about reptile sex in New York. That really does sort of lead you to the poem where you're like, what's going on? And that is from the poem Galapagos, right? So, and it's on page 43. And then another one. Let's see. There was one that I really loved. I was sort of torn about including this one, but it's so good. The dildo is hand blown. Now, that is from a poem called Glass Orgasm. Very enticing. So, I want to thank Jee Leong Koh for inspiring my most labor-intensive work of art. I love that book. Wonderful. And now let's hear from the poet himself. Oh, Reggie?
Oh, yeah. Let's give it one more time for Drew Pissarro, y'all. Seriously. Now I see the dildo as half full or half blown. I will never look at a dildo in the same way. A little bit of ephemera, and this is family affairs. A long time ago, kids, there was something called CDs. And Thaddeus and I recorded this in 1995. This is so old, we're totally new again. It's so exciting. But this is a vintage CD that Thaddeus and I were on with some fabulous folks. So it is not for sale. I just wanted to show off. But to our poet, we have 3 books for sale that you can buy right here and get signed by the poet. We have Inspector, Inspector. We have Connor and Seal. And we have Jee Leong Koh's latest book, Sample and Loop. So without any further ado, please, let's give it up for Jee Leong Koh, everyone. Welcome, welcome.
Okay, that's not. All right. Hi, good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah. Thank you so much, Thaddeus, for your work. You make us imagine when we see trees thrashing in the wind, that is the trees that are actually pushing the wind and not the reverse. That was really a terrific image. And thank you so much, Drew and Reggie and Lonely Christopher, for actually organizing this event, this reading in this place. I'm going to read for you from Inspector, Inspector, one of the books that Reggie mentioned. And Inspector, Inspector is a book about the legacies of fathers, personal, political, as well as poetic. Threading its way through the book is a sequence of 13 palinodes in the voice of my dead father. A palinode is not a poetic form per se, it is more like a poetic gesture. In a palinode, the speaker disavows something that they have said earlier or previously. And so by writing these 13 palinodes in the voice of my dead father, I was able to make my father, take back things that he might or might not have said when he was living. So I'm going to read you the third one. Palinode in the voice of my dead father, 3. All the time, the air sacs in my lungs winged out. Like lights in an inhabited valley, the locks of my heart closed at semi-regular intervals, my legs waterlogged. I thought, I have no regrets for living the way I did, where I did. The lights blessed the smoky Saturday dances with the implausibly slim waists of girls. The canals met us with boats on their leisured way somewhere to which our legs would deliver us. But we never left the valley. We bought a home paid for by running the machines, maintaining cool and comfortable the valley air. We had the two of you, as the valley said to do. And then first, the smog drifted over from the next valley and choked to death all our animals. And the smog staying years and years, so long we had almost acclimatized ourselves to it, was followed by the flood. So unlike my father, I did move away from Singapore, the valley, so-called. In my 30s, I moved to New York City. And now looking back, I actually wished I moved earlier, at a younger age. So the next poem is called To a Young Poet, but really it's more to a younger me. To a young poet, quit the country soon as you can, before you're set on a career path or marrying the home ownership scheme. Pay no heed to the village elders. They are secretly ashamed that they did not leave. Quit the country, but do not shake the dust off your feet against it. Leave instead with a secret smile for all that leaving has to teach you. Learn what it is to be welcomed for the coin in your purse, for strong hips in pushing a cart uphill, a firm voice in a good cause. When the welcome wears off, as it will, learn to leave again, this time by the sea. Be always on your way, and on arrival, sleep with anyone who asks. You never know what gift they may have for you in the morning. You will discover suddenly, or over the course of a winter night, what gift you have for them. Always kiss goodbye on the lips. There will be seasons of great loneliness. You cannot outrun it, so sit and survey the thunderless desert. In every town, pick up the local accent and blend it into yours, already impure, as a secret ingredient is fused into the top note of a perfume. Hearing you, the taverner will wonder where you are from. Drink deep of their wonderment. Do not betray it. After you leave a good tip for the barkeep, climb to your narrow room and write whatever you wish. Your flowers will graze the sweaty brow of a buffalo. Your politics will smell of perfume. If you write about the old country, you will write about a lover who leaves your side in the night to stand by the window and look up at the crescent moon. So when I arrived in New York in my 30s, I did what freshly, newly out gay men would do. I had a lot of fun. So I started writing this series of poems based on a sex diary that I kept in my 30s. So the series is called Ungovernable Bodies. So Carlos, November 30th, 2006, a long time ago. A bedroom is not a bedroom unless it has a means of egress, says the rules for cellars. After the larks have sung, our Romeo must have a system for leaving safely and secretly. It is only after marrying that our lovers find, at one tragic finish, one another in a tomb. A bedroom is not a bedroom unless it has a means of egress, says the rules for buyers. Outside my room in Queens, a fire escape for lovers who found their way to my bed. Staring at its black, complicated extensions, I wrote my earliest American poems about freedom and happiness, misery and desire. The night train frothing on the nearby track. Andy, April 7, 2007. Met at Splash, if you know where Splash is. You've been in the city as long as I have. He would not accept in any part of him, neither his mouth nor ass nor his ears, any protruding part belonging to a man, not a cock, neither fingers, toes, nor tongue. As if smooth as a pebble washed by the sea, he was inviolable too, like the seaside stone, as if to be smooth was to be unbroken on any and all sides, round as infinity. But he would allow his whole to be held, the whole in a part and a part of a whole, by the hand of a body or the body of a hand, and taken up by a boyish choice and glee, aimed with the slant of an eye and flung, a planet skipping into the ether of the sea. Andy again, May 27, 2007, this time at Mr. Black, which was a wonderful space. The tunnel has been closed for some time now, but a claw of panthers find their cast iron steps from daylight street to basement dungeon to suffer the flail of ecstasy. Mr. Conductor, when will train service begin? The velvet rope that ties one to all harmonically. The rose boy is end. The brick archers jump from toe to toe, making an entrance for the black detective with a blank map. He does not come in the name of the law, but with a nose ring that glints in the dark. Follow him. Father has been buried here for far too long. We will exhume his bones and beat a retreat playfully with the fever. Maybe it's not good for the laugh at Jee Leong Koh's. I think that's I'm going to read you another two poems from a different sequence from this book. It is the sequence is called A Simple History of Singaporeans in America, which is based on interviews I conducted with other Singaporeans, many of them artists and creators who have moved here. You know, just to prove to myself I'm not the first. This is the ceramicist for Hong Ling Wee, who arrived in 1992. On a NASA scholarship to map the world, she walked into a workshop on a whim to throw a lump of clay on a wheel and feel a foggy, quiet, pink, revolving world evolve into an object of the mind, under the body's pressure, slight and sure, and afterwards surrender to the fire, not that of fire, but that of accident, for a ceramic rocket fallen back to earth. And this she did for many years, living on little, explaining less, until she was surrounded by the fuselage. When the towers gashed vermilion and buckled, she was alone at home in Union Square. The noise expanded as it dribbled off to meet its echo, second detonation worse than the first report, in summoning half-buried images of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. In a foreign mood, she heard the phone ring, and a female voice, acclimatized but recognizable as Singaporean, asked for Wee Hong Ling. She never tires of telling this story, how the consulate located her and every Singaporean within an hour of disaster, when a black hole opened but was avoided because a star had called, a star called home. She never tires of telling this story, which I now tell you in my own fanciful way. Each iteration also explanation, the how developing into the why. Why her pitchers, bowls, vases levitate. This one is for somebody you might know. Kevin Kwan. This is the author, or Kevin Kwan, who moved to Houston, Texas at the age of 11. No fences, cool. No sentry boxes, cool. The driveway stripes the handkerchief neat lawns, like in the movies. Home Alone was something. He was not so hot about no maids. Lunch box he had to pack himself and find his way not only to but through Clear Lake High School, the normal life his father engineered far away from hereditary privilege. Who would anticipate the terminus? The cancer in the family that struck by lottery and made him drop New York for an uncertain term by his father's bed. There it turned over still bright memories of Singapore, the gate that always squeaked, the taste of Newton Rotundy, the click of mahjong tiles, the garden birthday parties, and shared a joke, or else a thought, a word, or three, like Crazy Rich Asians. And yet, another privilege. The clean white pillow grew hot under father, and he flipped it for a cool offertory to the head. I know he did it. Last year, I did the same. Is it time to read a very long poem as my closing poem? Is that okay? Yes. Do you have patience for it? Yes. I warn you, 7.5 minutes. Yeah, I'll try to sustain this. As I said, the Alanos read their way through the book. Alanos in the voice of my dead father, and of course, the very last poem, he wants to kind of reply from me. The reply. You're silent now, and it's no surprise. You have been a silent movie all my life. That's poetry's way of putting it, and it's dead wrong. You're no Chaplin, funny and glamorous, although you may be one of the many minions in Metropolis. No, you're not the proof for a thesis. My earliest memory is riding on your shoulders, heading home from the merry-go-round. My last memory of you living, your lung walls succumbing to the flooding, is the speechless and tearless hospital bed, and me planting a kiss on your forehead. Between these short cliffs, you bicycling down the gentle swirl of road that hugs the We're a home movie that nobody wants to watch, except the ones knowing, sentimental, and disputatious. Your 4 brothers rich with arrogance, your 2 sisters hard as stale biscuits, expect you to agree with them, and you do, backpedaling as you do. That's the rub. I see it and judge it craven of you. Not seeing then, I am your best reply. What with my school honors and eventually my scholarship to go overseas? While mother hogs the weekly phone calls with talk of winter clothes and shopping malls, your silence grows and grows on me, profound as the first snow falling on college grounds. At the end of time, 3 long exciting years, out of Heathrow, mother and you appear, and I'm shocked to see the snow in your hair. Loveliest of trees, the cherry now is hung with bloom along the bough. To my flowering regret, you've flown the distance, but I deny you the pomp and circumstance, thinking myself above empty ceremonies, and you and mother below the Latin service. I don't sign up for the Sheldonian show, but throw together an improvised shoot of us in the college garden, me geared up, and you gamely following this young pup. Not a word of reply. Not a subtitle, my Joe, his pips, unpaid bills. You won't know the reference, but you would like Joe, both of you, working men. He a blacksmith and you an electrician, both of you surviving shits for fathers with your goodness intact, saving dicks for sons with your belief in the best of lucks. There I go again, showing off my learning and irreverence. There I go again, poetrying. I'm still answering my aunts and dear uncles who are dying, dead, or softening to the middle of their heads. It's worsening since living in New York. I've written book after book after book and placed them like bombs in your hands. You keep them carefully by your Bible in the high drawer of the TV cabinet, the cheek by your turn your other cheek. Where is strength? Where is weakness? What is truly evil? What is goodness? The freedom fighters, someone's terrorist, someone's draft dodger, the pacifist. This week, my 11s read The Oedipus, and like all generations were nonplussed by the enormities wrought by right intent, fleeing father murder to father murder, abjuring mother sex to sleep with her. If to save a baby is to kill all babies through the lightning plague in the city, what should we do with the mewling mess, milk-stained, exposed, ankle torn on the green wooded slopes of Kithaeron? There are some places like Singapore that would make the careful calculation. There are some places like Greece once that would pose the question, and no more. You, my father, are the Grecian oracle. There I go again. This habit of reading life as if it's a work of art. This tendency grows from the library books devoured tenderly on the walk home, while avoiding the lances thrusting up like lampposts. And you encourage me, give me courage, when at the book's corner you leave me and shop with mother for life at OG. You show me as an unschooled man's able. You are replaceable and irreplaceable. At your wake, attended by relatives and a number of poet friends, I give the reply of the living to the dead. For you, looking oddly like bread in the yellowing husk of your body, the eulogy begins with a bicycle, and it says, I remember, just that. All the carefully chosen phrases reducible to one refrain. But the letter is not an eulogy. It has much more of me in it, and at last, much more of you, my Father, in me. When you're loaded into the oven to lift from us the annual burden of visiting and sweeping your grave, I'm seized by a wild desire to swear that before every poetry reading, I'll say, I'm Koh Jee Leong, the son of Koh Dat Se, in the manner of the Malays and the Scots. The desire passes. Let this be the brother, the guilty brother to the dead and gone. The reply a replacement for other ones. The movie you and I together caught. The son you have for the sons you have not. Thank you.
Jee Leong Koh, everyone. Thaddeus Rutkowski, everyone. I'm going to ask Thaddeus. We usually end with a poet, author, photo, and Drew. So let's give it up. Who do we have doing tech? I didn't give a shout out. Who is? All right, it is. Thank you. Let's give a big shout out to our fabulous tech duo there. They're so cute on that table, moving those knobs. And everyone in the Zoom land. So let's get some upbeat music, buy some books, and we will see you next week. And Waldman, Noland, and Joey De Jesus